Welcome to the Jamodi Podcast. We are all surrounded by amazing coaches and leaders, so let's get an inside look at not just what they do, but how they do what they do. After all, becoming the best versions of ourselves is Jamodi, just a matter of doing it.
Coaches and athletic directors, our sponsor Scoreboard Media has an incredible opportunity for your school. Right now, they're giving away 2 large LED video scoreboards, $152,000 value per school, to 32 select high schools across the country. Scoreboard Media pays for the boards, the software racks, and iPad controllers, as well as the delivery and installation. On top of that, they'll run the entire advertising program, generating a significant revenue sharing opportunity for the school. Since 2021, Scoreboard Media has been helping high schools upgrade their gyms and execute professional sponsorship programs. Not every school qualifies, and they're signing up new schools every week. So inventory is moving fast, and the install calendar is filling up for the summer. If you're interested, reach out to Scoreboard Media founder Charlie Megan at charlie@scoreboardmedia.com to set up a call and see if there's a fit.
So I actually, great sort of segue, like sort of into a new topic, but the same, kind of going to stay on the same lines for a second here. I had a parent, actually, I had first 2 years, went deep into the state tournament, great first 2 years. Third year, we had a young team. We started 4 freshmen. I mean, anyone who's coached knows, like, wow, we just, public school, small public school, we were rebuilding, and we had a couple of seniors. And I had a parent who, in his way, said, we used the run and jump press. And we also played a little bit of a matchup zone as I progressed, but that's a story for another day. But he said, like, insanity, sent like an email and said 3 nice things. And then, but, you're never going to be great with that. Similar, right? I guess all coaches have a choice. And he said, insanity is doing the same thing over and over again and thinking you're going to get a different result. And why don't you try something else, right? And we did. But that's, his limitations to his knowledge of basketball was like whip pressing. And so anyways, we ended up building with those kids and had a great run, state semifinals when they were juniors and on. So we had a great run with them, and we used the press. We included the matchup zone too. But it's just interesting that sometimes they look at sort of, and we shot a lot of threes as well. We were a dribble drive team. We fired a lot of threes, and we liked that. That was our style. We played fast, get up the floor, attack, and then attack on defense too. And, thinking back to that parent communication piece is like, sometimes you're going to get that. And like, for me, I believed in what we were doing, and, they don't always have to agree with our style of play. Said some nice things, don't agree with our style. We went on, we were successful with it. And, that's each to their own. But I think that also speaks to sort of something I always would hang my hat on was our full court pressure, run and jump defense. It was so important to us because it separated us from schools that might have been a little more athletic, a little bit bigger. Our center, and this is girls basketball at the time, was about 5'10". And we played against teams that had, one team had a center, went Division I. We beat in the state tournament, and she was about 6'3". But we pressed them the whole game. We didn't double off. We didn't double off of her. We hugged her the whole game and stayed with her. We didn't double her at all. We didn't need to. Maybe a little bit in the low post, but like when she had the ball in the press, we let her get it, and then we just denied everybody else. She'd pass it, and then we go run and jump again. We never left her. But that we won that game because of our press. We wouldn't have been, if they could have brought the ball up the floor comfortably and just threw it into her, we would have fouled out all our players. We couldn't have covered her, but we covered her because of the press, and we wore her down because of that. So that system was so important to our team. And so to hear that, you get that communication, and of course you think about it, right? People are watching the game and you start to reflect and think about your style and your system, and you talk to your coaches, but this is what we do, and we believed in it, and it was what made us great. And, I was never going to change it, but you certainly reflect when you hear that feedback.
Yeah.
So.
And I don't think that's bad. And again, they are entitled to their opinions, and I think the less confrontational we can be about that. But I was also thinking of an idea too that I think is important is sometimes being proactive with these meetings, being the ones that actually. I'm not saying look for conflict. I'm not saying that. Don't pick fights, but we all know after games when we either can read a player's body language or when we scan the crowd after the game looking for our loved ones, we see the nods of approval or a wave, or we see the opposite. Like parents, I feel like they think they're hiding it, how they really feel, but it's pretty easy to tell. And when I see that, I try to make a note of it either through the player or the parent and make a decision of maybe I want to be proactive and I'm the one who sends an email, say, hey, would you like to get together and meet? I'd like to talk about Johnny. Or I pull Johnny in the next day before he has an opportunity to do anything and say, hey, just want to see where you're at. I think eating the frog that way, doing the hard thing. And here's a really short story is had a player, I had his older brother and then his younger brother was playing and just not getting as much time. Great kid, loved their family, worked really hard, but just behind some guys and young. And I knew it was buggy. I knew it was hard on him, and I knew his parents pretty well. And I saw his mom sitting in the stands and during the JV game, and I just went up and sat next to her real quick. I said, hey, just want to let you know, first of all, that, and I really love your son, and I appreciate him so much. And I know that him not getting the time right now is tough. I just want to let you know that I acknowledge that. And she just got a little emotional. And she said, it is so hard to be mad at you because, one, I respect what we're trying to do, which is we're trying to win. And I never hold back on that, but it's also fair. But I think us like showing, like you kind of have said, like showing the human side, being vulnerable. Let's not act like this is easy and if you have kids, like mine's 18 and I've just gone through a couple summers of select ball where he's not been the best player and he hasn't played very much. And my wife goes, should you go talk to him? I go, no, I'm not doing that, but you want to and you judge, but I'm not in practice. I don't know everything going on. So I don't know. I'm just trying to I love the way the direction our talk has gone to something we didn't even have planned, but it is parent meetings and all these things that are so important to culture. This is a part of it. It's not just those words on the wall. It's how we do everything.
Yeah, and a big one that comes up a lot, and I talk to coaches about this a lot that I sort of support on the side, is the younger player, a freshman maybe in your program, who's really talented, still behind some of those older players, and you bring them up on varsity. I've seen two schools of thought on this, and you might have too. My school of thought, which I think a lot of coaches share, but also there's another side to this. I typically put that player at the JV level. Well, if they're good enough, they're going to start on varsity. Great, they're going to play. Yeah. But if you have a veteran team and they're going to be 9, 10, 11, 12, right? And you might not go that deep. You might play 8 deep. That kid can get some seasoning on JV and play and get those minutes. But the flip side is, and what I feel coaches that struggle more, sometimes you can struggle. Their parent might think they're good enough to play on the varsity, and you have that conversation with the data and the practice and whatever. But as the coaches, a lot of times I see coaches that will put them on varsity and they'll sit on the varsity and they don't play at that lower level. And it's a philosophical thing. I coached with someone, I was an assistant who I love dearly, but they would put kids on varsity and they wouldn't play them on JV. And they would keep them, they would practice with varsity, and then they might get in a little bit, but they sat a lot. And I used to say to them as an assistant, and, they said, hey, when you're a head coach, you can do it your way, but that's okay. But they would say, I would say, like, they could play, give them a quarter, give them a half. We could do quarters in my state. So let them play a little bit, and just because they're not getting that game experience. And but I might need them, and they might get in here. And some games they did, some they didn't. But that was a lot of parent conversations, I feel like, with younger players, was around sort of that player who could play varsity, and should they be on there, and the parent thinks they should, or the vice versa. You put them on there and they're not playing as much, and you sort of, what's the school of thought? Are they better to get time? I feel like it was my common sense to me that they should play on the JV and get those minutes. But the argument on the other end was, we want them on varsity, they're part of the team. We want them on the bench. We want them there every game. We want them to be part of it. I was like, they still can, so it was a back, but I feel like that was a thing that came up a lot with younger players was, what do you do with that player that's really talented, but maybe not quite ready for varsity? And sometimes parents think they are, and sometimes you might not think they are. And those conversations come up as well.
Man, I love that you brought that up. It's incredible. about 4 hours ago at our lunch period, I was sitting with my assistant coach, looking back, thinking back over. He played for me, and his younger brother played for me. And
Oh,
so
that's awesome.
now that having him back around, we were talking about some of those older teams. The culture in the gym right now, it really does feel like it's in a good place. And not that it won't be tested. We know it will. There are culture breakers that come up every day, but it's
Yep.
in a good place. So we were talking about that and how we got here. And then I started apologizing for, I think, some of my failures early on here at Faith. One of the big ones we talked about, though, was bringing players up, having them
Yep.
play JV. And early on, I think it was a more insecurity from me, worried about keeping the kid, worried about keeping the parents happy, letting him know how good I thought he was, whatever the motivation was. There's one player in particular, I brought him up, and it's not like he never played, but he could have had a freshman year where he ran the show, really learned our flow style of offense, made mistakes, scored a lot of points, confidence soared, but he was practicing with us. He did get in some games, but his dad at the end of that freshman year, or actually the end of his sophomore year, because his sophomore year we had a young team, but he was on. He played a lot, but he was like, we knew the freshman year was going to kind of be a throwaway, and he said that. I remember going like,
Yeah.
"Why do you say that?" He's like, "Well,
Yep.
I mean, he was on varsity, but he didn't really play," and like that's always stuck in my head. But
Yep.
it took me years to get to the point where, okay,
Definitely.
the guys on varsity minus the seniors, what do you call that? Underclassmen,
Yep.
they have to be good enough to play
Mhm.
major minutes. I don't care what grade they're in. They could be juniors. And if they're not, they're going to be on JV. They're going to
Yep.
play a lot. They're going to fail. I will have the group practicing with me that I want. And that could be freshmen, sophomores. I'll pull from those teams. Or some days I'll say, hey, JV, I'll tell them at the beginning of the year, JV is your team. I'm going to have you practice with me quite a bit because I want to work with you. And
Mhm.
then if we're traveling and there's no conflict or at a home game, you can sit with us. But
Yep.
I designate, like, because I had another player, and I'm sorry for rambling. I know this is your time. I apologize, but this is good. I had another player. I had him do both. He was on both teams. So, like, he thought he was JV, he thought he was varsity. And then at the end of the year, he's like, Coach, I really didn't feel like I had a team. I
Mhm.
don't want that either. So,
Yep.
in my opinion, this is what we do, coaches. We designate who is in I like the softball lineup idea. Who's in
Yep.
that top nine? The nine that in a 32-minute game, we can realistically get time. After that, and now I'm not talking about the seniors that you love them and they're still with you, they're on the team, that's fine. After that, though, they are JV players. And I say, this is your team. This is who you align with. This is in most practices, you'll be there.
Mhm.
But if I can pull you up and help, but the distinction between the two, we've done it for the last couple years here, and the juniors especially may not like it, but they're going to love playing a ton. And at the end of it, they're going to, I think, be more confident players.
Mhm. I love that. You said it best. I think having that distinction is so important because kids want to really know, like, where do I fall and where do I stand? And I think, where I started and where you jumped in, like that conversation is like, it's hard with those players sometimes because especially early in the year, you're still trying to evaluate them, especially a freshman and see where they're at and where do you
But
put.
you're right. But it's like discipline. You can always get easier, but it's hard to get harder. So I'd rather move a guy up. Like, you know
Yep.
what, man, you've been busting it where he got injuries, whatever, or he
Yep.
just winds up being better. You're right on the money, coach.
I always will, to your point, practice like at least, you don't have the games, you have some scrimmages, practice with the varsity and, you have a shot. And I think this communication, we're going to go back to it where we started, but you
Yeah.
have that conversation with this kid and say, look, you're a freshman, you have a great skill set. We want to see what you can do. We're going to practice you with varsity. There's a chance you could play some JV minutes this year and play some JV games. There's a chance you could be all varsity. We want to see what you have to offer. And you can have that conversation and have that dialogue. And I think if you're communicating it in a way that they can understand and like, okay, I have a chance to really work hard at this. And like I told you, I started 4 freshmen one year. they were good enough. They were better than the other kids I had. And I had to start them. And that's what it was. It was what it was. And sometimes you deal with that. I know you mentioned public school versus like private. And I think you see probably more of that public school you're sort of rebuilding. And I know that sounds like you started at public school as well. And we were rebuilding. We lost like 7, 8 seniors. And we just, that was where our numbers fell. We had some kids we had developed, but this younger group was really talented. And we put them out there and we played them, and we took some lumps that year, but we were better for it in the long run.
Thank you for checking out today's episode. Please take a moment to subscribe to this podcast, share it with your fellow coaches, and find us on social media for what's coming up next on the Jamodi Podcast. It's just a matter of doing it.